to it. Like, before I share any slides with anyone, I really want to invite everyone to look at each other's work and each other's impressions and comments with kindness, right? And with that growth mentality of, we are all here to learn, because I feel so strange, telling people, oh, maybe you could change it's this or that, because it's not a critique per se, right? But I do want to talk about things that align here. And I thought it would be much better to show real examples than for me to just from the beginning just say, hey, I do this, this, and that. Let's do this, right? So thank you for sharing your things with me, people. Hello, Karine. Good night. So I guess we have a pretty full house so far. I guess we could start, right? Some people told me they were arriving later on, but then we'll go ahead without them. Well, let's start off. I'm going by the order of who sent me the presentation. I was going actually, but now I realize the person I was going to call upon is not here. So I think it's it's better to go with who's here, right? So I am going to start with, wait a minute. Okay. There you go. Hello, Paula. Good night. So I am going to start with Michelle's material. Okay, me. Thank you so much for sharing once again. And I love these topics. Oh my God. So cool. Well, the first one we are going to see from Miss Me is fear of adulting. Oh my God, this hits home, right? Jesus Christ, who never? So I love this topic once and for all. I think it's important to establish number one criteria for me, and you can even take notes. Number one criteria for me in having a good class is it being universal to human existence, right? Of course, if we teach kids, we're not going to necessarily be able to teach this class. But normally, if we have adult students, we can teach this class to all the adult students we have without any trouble. And that is what you want in a lesson plan, okay, people? Because when we say we're going to give personalized classes, that doesn't mean that we're going to make one fucking class for each single person that we teach. Because we do not have time for that. Neither are we paid that well to be, making different classes for each person. What happens is that we can make material that is flexible enough to be used with many different people for us to be making alterations in the way we apply the material, in the way we conduct the material, in the way we support our students less or more according to their needs. Okay. But when you plan a class, think of like, can this be talked about with more than one person, or is it so specific that I can only talk to this student about it? So I love this topic because of this. So let's do it. Let's run through it. I'm going to slide through it, okay? And then if I have any questions, I'll ask the person that sent the slide. So here we have the cover. Then we start like, have you ever felt like an adult? And then we have an article, right? We have some text, question, text, phrase for us to agree, disagree with, more text, text, question, oh, telling about a moment, then text, text, questions, right? Questions, conversation questions, more conversation, some life skills that are valuable, right? A nice list. We have a video, we have a task. Okay, that is that first lesson plan that we're talking about today. So right off the bat, I love that we start with questions, right? Like questions, people, are the backbone of our lessons. I like to put all my classes focus on asking questions. And I like to keep it this way because it seems more dynamic. Different from, let's say, when you have a class where you come and there's a lot to read, a lot to show, a lot of moments where the student is just listening. I like to conduct my classes in a way where they feel like therapy almost, in the sense of During therapy, we have linear conversations with our therapist, right? They go asking us different questions that help us have different perspectives on the topic. So questions are the focus of good classes as well in my practice. So have you ever felt like an adult? We have an article. What I would say is right off the bat, I would maybe ask more questions already about this. Like, I don't know. How old are you? How old do you think we have to be truly adults? Or after what age are we considered adults? Or what should an adult be able to do that maybe, we could maybe start with that kind of conversation. We go into an article. I'm going to open the article here and see what is the density of this read, because I think it's really important for us to consider our students' reading levels and maybe offer different choices according to how well they read or something like that. So coming here, we have fear of adulting. I'm 21, but I still feel like an adult. Me, one question. Is this text the same one that we have in the slides?
Yeah, the same one, but on the slides, it's like a resume of everything. Because I didn't want
Um,
us to be decided to be reading like for 50 minutes straight. That's why I choose the most important parts. And then I send the link. Oh, here, there's the link. If you can dig further after class, feel free.
Perfect, perfect. I like that idea because a lot of dense reading, it takes away from the rhythm of the class, right? Because maybe it's a big challenge for the person, or the person doesn't read that well, or it's just a lot of time doing something that maybe you could be doing, they could be doing out of classes. Now I know it's utopic because sometimes we send things to students and they couldn't give a shit, like they couldn't, they really don't read it. But then comes in the autonomy part of us realizing that we don't have control over our students, and then like, you're lost. I'm doing my part. If you're not going to read this after the class, then that is your problem, right? So going back to the slide, we have the text here. I tend to look at this, and this is I plan my classes thinking of how my brain works. And I'm very ADHD. So I don't do well with a lot of information on my screen at once, or else my brain tends to spiral into chaos. Like my beginning screen on my Windows here is like 3, 4, 5 icons max, because if I have a lot of shit going around, I get lost. So immediately I just think this is kind of overwhelming. Because if I'm a person that has a little bit of difficulty reading in English, like I have a hard time, I'm going to see this and I'm already going to say, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, kill me now. So it's like very dense, very dense. Because for me, of course, I could read this easily, but even so, I feel lazy to do it. Just like when people make Instagram posts and they put so much text on their carousels, and I'm like, oh my God, TLDR, too long, didn't read. And I believe in the power of, well, how are you going to teach vocabulary if you're not reading in classes? The power of questions, using the questions to ask all the things and use the vocabulary that we want to teach them. So here we go. What's the difference between becoming an adult in Brazil and in the US? That is nice. Why? Because we have comparative structures here. We're using different structures in every question so that we have a broad range of grammar being worked on, right? Then we have more text. I don't know how to adult. Do you agree with that? Nice. I could even take this to a new level. I could take many phrases about adulthood and we could debate them. Like a good adult has to do this, or, like there's that Tweak thing. There's that Tweak app. Have you guys seen Tweak? It's like this platform that uses AI to help us plan classes. I'll send the link in the group later if you guys want. And then you could put any subject there and it gives you like opinions of people, short little opinions that are adaptable according to the level. So maybe you could have little opinions about adulting then, because you have then this small section of text that is maybe a little bit less overwhelming and you have more debate stuff to do. So I love this. Debating things, debating ideas is absolutely nice. Then what does it mean to make the transition to adulthood? This could be a question. This could be a question and we could let the student just answer that, right? Text. Talk about a moment you had to make a huge decision that made you feel all grown up. Perfect. Questions. Text, text, a lot of text. But these questions here, I would automatically divide them into different slides. Like each one of these questions would be in a different slide because, again, the overwhelming thing, you know, when you don't necessarily speak that language, like I see a lot of words here, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to understand these questions and answer them too. Inside the person's brain already comes like this storm of insecurities maybe, and that is depending on the student profile, right? But I prefer to be safe than sorry, so I tend to keep things very minimalist, just one question per slide, just very soothing for the eye, right? But I love this. Great questions. How did the pandemic affect things? Yes, because you're talking about present, past, future opinions and culture. And I love this because that is the objective, to dive deep into the subject and to approach it from every angle possible, like a fucking journalist. So the idea is adulting, and we have this person, and your idea as a journalist is to understand everything they think about adulthood, showing them all the possible things about like what adulting could be, in the sense of asking them questions and making them reflect, because maybe our students didn't even have time to think about that before, right? And I love these little links. After, I normally put links in the ends of my presentations too, especially if we have extra time, which we normally don't have, because we normally don't get to the end of the questions because there's just a lot of questions. But I love putting links there because there's always those students that I don't know, making a list based on the previous one, talking about some important life skills young adults should know. I love this. This could be something that could be a question too, maybe, but I love them making a list and writing things down. Maybe they could send it in the chat for you, right? And then they'd be like, oh, teacher, como fala declarar imposto de renda? And then you would be answering those questions. So I love that. I love that. Any question, people, or any comment about something that has been said here in the correction of this slide? Correction? No, right? Any comments? Me, do you have any comments since it was your work?
Yeah, just about the questions parts. This one is from last year. Nowadays, I'm follow your example, like one question each time, and when we can dive more into it, because the student, if they feel free to talk more when they have only one question. Okay, yeah, not feeling pressure to answer all these 5 questions at once. Now I have to rechange this one as well.
Absolutely. I love that. That's something you pointed out. That's nice. They don't feel pressured into being fast. Because it's like, oh my God, I have 5 questions to answer. And I look at the clock and I don't know if I'll have time. So if you had time to get until slide 25, nice. If you didn't, they don't know when was the end of that class, anyways. So some students I only get until slide 4. Others I go to slide 20. Others I go to slide I don't know what. So that's what personalization is in the end, right? Letting them go in their time, in their rhythm. So I loved it. But great class all around me.
Thanks a lot.
We have another one here that I hadn't opened yet because I just got access to it. Oh, that is different, right? Because I already see that you have one question per slide. I already see that that is different. Let me open it here. She said this one is a little bit grammar structured, right? So the topic is ed and ing adjectives. Oh my God, that is fucking tricky. Maybe I might steal this class. Who knows? So first of all, what makes you feel scared? Perfect. What is satisfying for you? How often is your mom worried about you? Do you think amusement parks are terrifying? I would open this question maybe. I would open this question a little bit more and think, have you ever been to an amusement park? Is there amusement park in your city? What what attractions do we have in amusement parks? What foods do we have in amusement parks? Are you afraid to go on rides in amusement parks? So we have this one question that we can dig deep into, go full on reporter mode, and just like ask a bunch of them. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself and we have more following. So, what was the most disappointing thing in your life? Oh, but then again, the objective here is the adjectives, right? So the objective here is not talking about amusement parks. So yeah, I get why you only put one question now thinking about it. Though that is sometimes why I avoid planning classes thinking about the grammar and I try to think more about the subject, because then we have a flow of a conversation. There's more like a vocabulary that's consistently being developed. But I get the need to focus on this type of grammar. What was the most disappointing thing in your life? Which experience made you feel fascinated? I love this. Um, well, this could make sense, absolutely. People would read this maybe, and you could talk about this, but I automatically do not want to read this. But this is me, okay? This is my instinct because I just see a lot of text and then my brain is just like, "Ah, this is not a book." But I think that this is very valid if you're going over the rules and you're talking about it and you're giving examples, right? Well, next, take this quiz. Ooh, bamboozle quiz. Nice. Let me see what this is about. Okay. Complete the sentence type of thing, right? So I was so beep in that lesson, I almost fell asleep. This book was really beep. I couldn't stop reading. Yes, I like this. I like this. I don't tend to go towards complete the phrase type of exercises because again, I always like the questions that make a person have a whole sentence being formed and practice that grammar of the structure, but I like the idea that they're trying to remember specific words here. So I think it's more than valid, right? Like every now and then, because anything I say here we need to take into consideration that we have more than one class per month normally, right? So if you're not doing this in every class and you're varying your strategy, there's room for many different things, right? It doesn't always have to be like just questions, for sure. Back to the slide. Okay, I think this is the end, right? Me, yeah, I love this. Okay, great class. So in the end, we have maybe a short class. And I think the thing about this is it's a very short class in the end, right? So because it's just 8 slides. So I would imagine you would have to stretch this or take a long time in the quiz. But I think it works, right? I like doing that type of thing sometimes every now and then with certain grammar strategies too. Like I even opened this slide to talk about it. This one you guys have probably seen it in my spreadsheet is called Who's the Most? And then I use it to work on adjectives with my students. So instead of creating a list of words, as always, I ask questions. And the interesting thing that I didn't even plan the lesson necessarily just thinking about this moment, but I asked some questions like with most and long adjectives, and then suddenly we have healthiest. So then they're so used to the most organized, most beautiful. And then they're like, what the fuck is this, teacher? What is this healthiest shit here? And then it's like, oh, when you have a word that's small, you don't put more in front. You use the EST in English. So this EST means more. So it's mais saudável, And then they're like, oh, okay, cool. And we don't have to give a lot of emphasis to this moment. We don't need to talk about it. We don't need to read the grammar. We just, okay, that's how it is. Nice. Okay, continue. Outspoken, more toxic. Oh, teacher, miss, this is a small one, right? Why don't we put est, toxicest? Can't I say toxicest? And then you say, no, not all words are possible to do that. And oh, what's the rule, teacher? In reality, I say we do have some rules, like the ED one. When it stops with an ED, we don't. With an ING, we don't. But in reality, you're gonna have to have experience with the language and read and listen so that you can identify the ones, because the rules are not very strict. Because let's be honest, like we can teach these grammar rules, but there's always a fucking exception in English. Like, and that makes me fucking pissed off. But it's just like it is what it is, right? Arrogant and empowered, and then eventually we go to weirdest, and all they remember again that the small ones have, that sort of structure. So yes, working on grammar through specific questions, I like that. I like, talking about grammar rules in a way that's natural, in a way that just exposes what's going on. Now, me, do you have any questions, any comments about this one that I just talked about here?
This is one is not one of my best classes because I prepare in like 10 minutes. But I will dig into it as well. And this part here of the adjectives, at the end of the question, I was like, oh, did you see the difference between that we have some adjectives with ed and ing? So this is the rule here because of this and that. So what's that?
Nice, perfect, nice. And you could even make those observations during the question. You know, like you ask them a question that has scared, and then a question that has satisfying. You could say, "Oh, did you notice that like these are both adjectives, like they're different?" And maybe even talk about the rule there in a contextualized way. But also at the end, like maybe it works too, right? It's really about your intimacy with your student and knowing how their brain works, how their brain responds to the information you give them. That's why I always like to ask my students, "Hey, how did it feel to listen to this? Did this make sense to you? Or, how are you feeling here? Did you feel it was too complex or whatever?" And we know our students, right? So, yeah. Anyone have any questions, any comments? You guys are awfully quiet. No?
Can I?
Yes, please, Paula.
Well, when I saw 8 pages only, I just imagined that she probably would ask more and try to elaborate more each question. That's what I do sometimes. I would say that I'm not very. I cannot do very short slides, very short classes, but when I do it, I just try to hang it in a different way. So then try to ask different questions or put my students to ask questions sometimes. So I give them this space as well. So yes, we can, but I can't. I actually can't make very small slides. It happens very not very often, but yeah, just
We
that.
can stretch it, right? Sometimes we can
Yeah,
stretch it, like a short presentation. We just like milking that cow dry, and it is it does happen. It depends on the level of inspiration we're feeling, but it is possible. Yeah, I tend to go overboard, and you'll see that some slides I go out of it. I'm like 30 questions, and I know nobody's gonna ask 30 questions, but I'm just like, better safe than sorry. Better safe than sorry. But I absolutely get that. Yes, milking a class dry is absolutely possible. Have done it for sure. And you know what, people? I think that's something so important to talk about. How it's not about how long you spend planning the class. It's not about how beautiful the class was. It's not about how. It's really about how you're gonna apply it. It's really about the energy you come into class with. It's really about like the love that you show when you're asking the questions, and it's really about that in the end because you know we don't have time to be worried about frills. So thank you for sharing your lesson plans with me. I'm going to jump into another person's lesson plans, okay? I know you had one more, and if we have time for it, we'll go back to it, okay? Just so we have we're covering different people. So the next one is you, Miss Paula, right? You sent your slides in to me too. I saw that you plan your classes via PDF, and I'd love to understand your reasoning behind that.
no, actually, I just realized that you couldn't see the emojis or videos. So then I can send you the link, can I?
Oh, to
Because
what?
if I send
Is it
you
a
a
Google
link
slide?
at Canva, it's Canva.
Oh,
The
sure. Send
Canva
it to
link.
me.
Is that okay? Okay, so
Yeah, send it in the
I'm
chat.
going to send the here in the chat, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I
Uh,
thought you were teaching your class through a PDF.
no, no. So I'm gonna send past events.
I don't know. Maybe it would make sense, right? I don't know. That's why I
I
asked.
decided, I decided, yes, sorry. I was teaching actually when I saw your message. So then I tried to do it very quickly. So I didn't realize.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
And I decided to send you another link. This one is the past events. This past events is for a basic level.
Okay.
And another one that's a conversation. So I thought
Give me
it,
access.
no, it was supposed to be open, So, okay,
Let me try
try it
again.
again, please.
Uh huh. Okay. There you go.
All right.
Okie dokie. Okay. So this class is about past events. Let us see
To
what we
be
are dealing with.
after we see the rules a little bit, and then this would be something for them to just watch and then talk. Yes.
Nice. Okay, let's see this. So past events, there's a focus on this topic, then the tenses. We have a video here, right? It's a simple past conversation. Oh, I've seen this video. This is the traditional video. Let's talk. Then we have some questions. Paula, what observation do you think I would make about this slide here after having listened to what I said about Mies?
Same, right?
What?
Yeah. But about having only one question per slide, that's better.
Yeah.
I agree. But this is an old slide, an old slide, old class I prepared last year. So just like Michelle, it's old, but now I'm creating differently. So I decided to bring old classes, so then you could just say everything you want to say, because they used to be my last classes. I used to do it few
Okay.
months ago.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's talk. And then we have questions about the video here, right? And then they talk about what the person did on their days of the week and the things that they visited. And there are some phrases to read. I was wondering what you did with your student while you were showing this to them.
Yes, as I said, it's for the basic level. It was a class created for some students that weren't able to really understand everything from that video, and really they weren't having the first contact with verbs in the past tense. So the video comes with no subtitles. They have to listen. Then I put it again, I repeat it, and they try to get the verbs in the past. And as I said, we previously had a class about it, but they are not very familiar. Oh my god, they never used it to verbs in the past. So then in these slides, I just try to highlight the verbs, the structure of the verb in the past, because I don't remember if all of them, but most of them are irregular, so they're different. They don't come with ed. So that's the point, and then a conversation part after that.
Nice, nice. So, you know what I would say that if I'm going to, if I want my students to understand past tense, I don't necessarily present the tenses actually in different moments. I try not to make this distinction so often, and I noticed that English schools had this tendency to first teach you the present, then teach you the past, then teach you the future, then teach you past participle, then teach you conditionals, and then it's sort of following that brick by brick logic that I mentioned before, where we're building one item of grammar and then we dominate another and then we dominate another, when organically we don't learn like that, right? We learn like a lot of things at the time and then maybe we make mistakes, but then gradually as we have more experience, more use, more repertoire, we solidify our grammar structures, right? So I wouldn't worry too much about just teaching them the past tense, but I do get how that could be tricky because irregular verbs suck ass. So then we have here these questions about the person's life, right? Right off the bat, we know that I'd say one class, one question per slide, but I would also say I would start this conversation talking about something personal, something to rein the student in. Because sometimes if we start a class talking about something that has no correlation to the student, their brain doesn't really have the chance to land in that class. I like to bring mindfulness into my class and presence. And the way I foster that is through connecting the student to the class right off the bat. Sometimes people like to call those warm ups, but I'm even planning this post for social media saying my whole fucking class is warm, bitch. Because I really believe that our whole class should be the student just warming up and feeling cozy in that environment, being asked questions about them. So I would absolutely start with this and ask them about their trip, where they went, what they like, blah, 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 all the details about the trips, because then the person is really there. Nobody like nobody is as involved in abstract scenarios as they are with their own lives. People love talking about themselves. So I like to harness the power of our egocentrism, and then I use that in my classes. And there you go. So maybe you would have a longer class if you could ask a lot of questions in the past, you know? And then that makes me think of how we can think of sometimes situations that require certain use of a certain tense or a certain grammar unit. Like, for example, if a person is talking about their career and the things they've done in their career, they're going to absolutely be using the past. If the person is talking about a trip they had is always going to be in the past. So maybe we have a wider branch because we're talking about situations instead of just the grammar, and then we have a better flow. So, yes. Any observations, people? Any questions? Paula? Any observations? Any questions? No? Okay.
Can I send the other link?
Yes, sure,
You have
absolutely.
one more?
The daily routine, right?
No, I decided to change it for a conversation class, which is intermediate or advanced.
Oh, okay,
Is that
so
okay?
sure, absolutely. Rebecca, you can speak while we open the link.
Yeah. So, Paula, do you think Canva is easier than Google to plan your classes? Because I think Canva is like very beautiful, but do you see as a simple tool? I have never tried it. So maybe if it's like simple, I can try it. But I want something very simple.
I decided to use Canva because I was used to, well, during my graduation, I used PowerPoint, right? And I didn't like my slides. And then with Canva, I could bring, I don't know, something more good to the eyes or something like that. I don't really like this. This is the slide, the way I make all my classes, but I don't really like it because this one was the best one, but whatever. I just think
I
it's
think it's so beautiful.
better, something more. I don't know. I'm not, the word doesn't come to my mind now, but it's a little bit more interesting, right? To watch, but it's not very, very easy because I don't know. I can't put sounds. Sometimes I try to think to do something that it was easier in PowerPoint and I can't do in Canva, so I just give up and I keep going planning the lesson. But I think it's actually easier in most of the aspects.
So thank you. And I think it's very beautiful. But yeah,
Thank you. I didn't create it actually; it was ready, so I just used the slide.
Template.
Yes,
Yeah.
the template. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This is eye catching. This is very eye catching. Absolutely. And I love the fact that it was already ready because I say people like do not waste your time making frills. People do not waste too much time trying to make slides beautiful. Like get a template and change the template or just, make my fucking slides are all the same. Like literally, they're almost all the same. There's so little variation. And I tend to think that like in marketing, in neuroscience, we study about repetition and how repetition makes our brain feel comfy. So I'd like to think that when my student sees that slide and it's always the same, they're like, okay, I know this. This is familiar. This is, this is, ooh, okay, I know this feeling, I know this place. So I love standardizing my shit because it makes it easier. And then I just go copy a whole fucking presentation and change up the questions, like honestly. And that saves me so much time than starting a blank thing. So yes, yes, yes. Abner?
So, hi everybody. I just
Hello.
like pop out. So, hello. I would like to say, in my opinion, Canva is really easy to use. Just talking to Rebecca, and now that I have access to the VS slides, that it's fucking awesome. Everybody knows. And because I tend to do a lot in my classes, I am mix it up like some Can I show you guys so it's
Not
better to
yet.
see?
Wait a minute. Send the link
Okay,
in
I'm
the
going to
chat and I'll
send.
open it
So,
after I finish Paula's. But
okay,
yes, send it, Queen.
because I just wanted to say like I'm mixing this, like your slides are so simple, so I'm like taking this what is works for me, and adding some adornments. I don't know. I used to think they were something to catch the attention of the students, but I'm changing my mind. So I'm going to
Ooh.
check. I'm going to send to you guys so you can
Send it
see.
in the chat. Yes, yes, yes. But you know what? That's the thing. I used to think that I had to catch my students' attention because we think that engagement sometimes is really about certain things. We have this idea of what is engagement. But in reality, the student should attention should be caught just by the fact that they're paying your ass to teach them, right? So it's like I don't think it's the teacher's job to necessarily entertain the student, because that is like we're not fucking clowns, right? But I do think we need to rein our students in and bring their presence, right? Their presence into class. Because sometimes they could even be paying attention to us. They seem to be there, but they're maybe even not. And in the back of their heads, there's shit going on. So I think reining the student in is really the term I like to think of instead of just, you know, touching and teaching is like, I think that's the deal when you're teaching a toddler. But our students are not fucking toddlers. But I love that. It will be a pleasure to look at that. Social medias. Let's go. Social medias. Tonight we're going to discuss a very deep topic. Are you living an Insta lifestyle? Okay. To scroll through the feed. This could be a question. How long do you normally scroll down your feed? Or how often do you doom scroll? Doom scroll when you're like scrolling endlessly without ever stopping, and then eventually you're 2 hours later and you're still like in this position. So you could ask a question like that. Um, is it going forward? I don't. To be addicted. Would you consider yourself addicted to social media? Let's talk. And then, do you have social media? But one slide, one slide, one slide. I love these. I have a question. I have a slide about social media. It is the same thing. Absolutely. Oh, one observation though that I did think of when I saw the cover. Social media does not have a plural. Okay, people. Social media is like data and people, and information. We don't put an S to that, okay? Because social media is like the all of the things. Are you living a lie? Will this be a video? Oh, okay, it's a video. Like it, necessary videos. What do you think of the message of this video? One slide. What negative results can blah, blah, blah. One slide. Yes. What annoys you when you are scrolling down social media? And then you know what happens? You don't have to spend time looking for this thingy-majig here. More. What do you think the message of this video is? Do you agree with it? What negative results? Yes. Feel annoyed again? Do you know any of these stories that make you feel annoyed? Do you think that could go 2 weeks? You could go 2 weeks without social media? I think these questions don't seem to be so connected to me, but I think when you're applying them, maybe that does make sense. So hang out with friends. Maybe that could be a question too. When you're hanging out with your friends, are they normally using their phones? Or do you have any agreements with your friends about hanging out and phones? Yes, Paula, please.
Uh, these are expressions or sentences related to the video. So
Okay.
my point was to bring how to say the actions there is shown in the video. So that's why they're gonna be more. So
Nice. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Nice. So then we continue, throw away, and then that's the thing. I tend to shy away from exposing things necessarily. I love asking questions because we're exposing in a way that's already dynamic and prompts something. Because or else I feel like we just, okay, can you repeat this, throw away, or can you read this, throw away? To throw trash in the bin or trash can. Okay, what is that? Okay, para jogar lixo na caixa. So I feel like it ends up being a little bit less dynamic, maybe, if we're exposing vocabulary instead of using it in a contextualized way. Because then maybe what is the fixation? Our brain, to fixate things, normally it has to use something. So it's like learn, use, learn, use, learn, use. And then that ends up fixating that grammar, that vocabulary. So I think that's highly important. To put on makeup. Okay. And then we have more expressions. Do you think social media can be dangerous? Then I think these questions could all be in the beginning, maybe, and then this video business in the back. Just like in the sense of, let's have this conversation, let's focus on the conversation, and then if we eventually have time, we'll go into this video and we'll listen to it and discuss it and unpack it and talk about the different expressions and things like that. And then I think that is the end. That is the end. So a very nice class about a very awesome subject. This is so necessary. And like we could unpack, we could go deep, we could go, compare the past and the future, what the future of social media could be like, go into conditional terms of like, what would the world be like if we suddenly got disconnected from all social media platforms, like go in different directions with the tenses and the grammar, because that also strengthens the whole, structure of things. Any questions or comments, my people, or my Paula?
No, just thank you for your comments.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, and thank you for submitting your lesson to be talked about. Okay, we can say social networks, right? Yes, we can say social networks. Yes, we can. Okay, and this is Abner's. Let me open Abner's. Let us see. Welcome, student. Okay. So Abner, I noticed that most of your classes start with a welcome page. Can you tell me the reasoning behind that?
I just open. I start wait the student to log in to get in the class with this welcoming page, and then I start the conversation with the welcoming page. It's just there to appear something on the screen, and yeah, that's how it normally works.
Interesting. I have that thing where I'm always saying that I tend to avoid sharing my screen as much as possible in class because I want my student to be very big. I want my student to be the biggest thing in the class. I want them to be my absolute focus. And I tend to think that my love, my smile, my energy, our interaction would be much more beautiful than any page I could put, you know?
Sure, sure. The platform that I use, the student and I can like wide. How can I say that? Like
Widen.
widen. Yes. The presentation is always tiny. So to them to see the presentation bigger, they needed to wider. They needed to
Widen it up.
widen it. Yeah, they needed to widen it. So yeah, it's there, but when it's ready, when it's comes the time to them to like, okay, paying attention to the slides, they can widen it up.
Understood. And what platform do you use to
Oh,
teach?
I use Discord.
Mm,
Discord.
cool. The game platform. And why do you use Discord? I'm curious.
Why? Oh, I think it's easier. Like you can create servers. In the servers works like the class, the online class, and you can have separate classes. Let's just say like separate channels for each student, and every student can like go together, interact with each other in the same server, or you can separate them in different servers. Like it's so you can do everything. That's why I use.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do they just open the website or do they have to download anything?
Oh, they have to download the Discord application, on their
Mm.
computers or in their cell phones. So work for both. And you just share your server ID, and then they are up.
Mm, that is nice. That is
It is nice.
awesome.
It's so
I
cool.
I do think that my students would be kind of like, "Oh my god, technology, no,"
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
I
Because
have
they're
some
old,
students.
maybe. But like,
Yeah.
I love that. I love Discord to have communities. I use Discord for The Sims, but I never thought about using it for
Plus, it
classes. So
works. It works perfectly to me, and I really recommend for everybody that talks to me about it. I use Discord, and I have like included students who used to work, so they don't have to log out their work platform. They just switch servers.
nice, nice. Okay. Choose your destiny. Can you describe your favorite smell? What is your opinion on the importance of learning multiple languages in the world? How are you feeling today? Then the student chooses one of these questions to answer.
Yes, sure. They read out loud, maybe, or they just read in silence and then choose to answer out loud. And they needed to like chat the answer too. So I made them talk and make them write a little bit, and starting to getting confident, more and more confident to do more stuff.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. I would maybe keep the questions in a certain topic, or maybe just
Yeah.
ask one question focused on one thing and one thing at a time, as I always say. But if this is your style, yeah, it's your style.
Okay.
How are you feeling today? Well, I know that sometimes it's a tendency that we have to show words and give students options on how they could feel, but I do like to ask them and let them translate the feelings that they are truly having in that moment. And if they're always saying fine, then I'm like, okay, another word today because we used that one already. So each class they're using one different word maybe to describe how they're feeling, and then they're learning that in a more contextualized and gradual way instead of just having a lot of words that they're choosing from.
Okay. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It's okay.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Okay. Again, this could be a question, right? I think this could absolutely be a question. Guided text, expressing your feelings. Yes, I love that it's a short text, that it's not too much to read. Nice. When it comes to understanding, and then you're talking about this is maybe somewhere where I would come again and not put more than one slide with text, but I get that maybe that could be your thing.
Yeah.
There are. So again, I would maybe contextualize this too. So I have a class, for example, where I talk about there to be, and then I'm asking about different things in their house. So each room of their house, or each part of their city, or each like item in their closet. So then we're giving this use in a contextualized way right off the bat. But I guess that if you're just presenting the topic, and then you're gonna have more in the next one. So I'm gonna scroll ahead so I can see if that's the case here.
Yeah. And
There is.
I think that's the case because I was kind of like using your type of approach. You can see like it's a copycat, I just add some things, but in the end of the day, is I like to work with text in a different way. So I present the text and made them read and correct some pronunciations and talk about English, and then we move on. So the text I have 3 slides, but I work different in different ways with different slides. So
Okay. Is there a park nearby? So here you're mixing the bathroom and the park and the other things, right? Are there any bad thoughts on your mind lately? So this is nice because you're using comments to explore questions to explore this. It could again be more inside one subject, so there's a certain mental flow to it. But I like this. There will be a new store opening next month. Yes. Okay. And that is that. This is nice. I think this is a beautiful presentation. How long do you spend to create a class like this?
yeah, that's the point. Normally, I spent like 45 minutes to do because they have templates, so it's easier to just move the things on the screen. And I don't have time to it. I needed to do things faster too. But I like this creative process of creating things, this artistic shit that I like. I like to spend time just putting stars and butterflies over my slides. But I know it takes time, and time is money sometimes. Sometimes I think a lot of times, but yeah, you got it.
No, but I think that like it's totally valid for us to want to make something that looks good. Sometimes when I'm having a conversation with a student where I could maybe be passively having the conversation because the student is just going off, I secretly have a slide open here, an old slide open, and then I'm making maybe putting some images into it, and I'm spicing it up a little bit or editing something that I remembered. So I'm kind of multitasking in a certain sense. So I get that absolutely. I just always say we need to be mindful of the time we're allowing ourselves to spend and like the intention we're doing it with. So if it's something that's taking over you, be mindful of it. But if it's something that you're doing and it brings you pleasure, brings you joy, like, yes, make that class that looks good. But remember that quite often that stuff doesn't make such a big difference to our students. If we have a basic slide or if we have a colorful slide, it virtually makes not a lot of difference unless we're teaching kids because they're like, oh my God, the pretty princess, the unicorn. But when we put the focus on the English itself, I think that we have less work because I'm not looking for images every slide. I'm not looking for examples every slide. These days I corrected, I was having a mentorship where I was doing this with a mentor, a mentoree, a mentored, a mentoree. And she had like this cute ass thing like Star Wars, and it had all the different Yodas with different emotions. And then you would ask, how are you feeling today? And she spent like hours finding the Yodas and the different things. And I'm like, no, honey, just ask them how they are. Listen and ask more questions because you're saving yourself time ultimately for things that maybe are superficial. And that's what I think we need to do is like be smart with our time because yes, beauty, yes, presentation, but in the end, like functionality should be above everything, right? But I loved seeing your different ways of planning classes because there's no right and wrong way, I would say, right? There is your way of adapting ideas and concepts, but we can have these little ideas, these little things in mind when we're doing so. So I put together this little thing here that I'm going to send to you guys on Canva afterwards, just for some reference. But it's a little like guide of how I plan my lessons, right? How I do my things. I normally time myself when I start planning a class to see how long I take, right? So I noticed that I take up to 20 minutes or less. The ideal is less, but then sometimes I go to 20 because I'm feeling frisky. So let me just open this, present this so it's bigger and you guys can see it. So my thing is, what is an effective lesson for me, right? What are effective lessons? They're engaging and dynamic. And when I mean engaging, I don't mean entertaining. And when I mean dynamic, I mean that the person is fully involved in every moment, that I'm speaking less than the student, that the student is communicating most of the time and they're not doing something boring that is maybe like snooze fest. They're focused on conversation, right? The communication is the focus. Anything that my student could be doing alone, out of classes, or that AI could be telling them to do, that ChatGPT could be doing for them, that they could be doing through immersion in their routine, I leave it out of the class. And I do things that only me and him, me and them can do together. Things that they depend on another human for, which is having a moment to really use English because they could read at any moment. They could watch videos at any moment. But how often do they have a person to speak real English to? You know? And then when they go suddenly to an exchange, they're like, oh my God, I don't have repertoire, I don't have practice because I don't have real conversations. Real conversations are the thing. And that is why people get lost when they go abroad because they're just like not used to having conversations, right? A good class, in my opinion, introduces new vocabulary naturally. Okay. Naturally, I mean, not in a prescriptive, not in an exposing in a banking education sort of style. It's something contextualized, which, as I said, is normally through a question, right? Because you see that the big focus here is questions. I've used the lessons to fixate and strengthen structures. So I don't use future only in one lesson. Every lesson, there's a question in the future. Every lesson, a question in the past, a question using conditionals. And you'll see that pattern so that the student has many chances to cement, to fixate, and to grow that structure in their little English garden. I also keep it as universal to humans as possible, so applicable to many people. Decluttered and minimalist with few things on the slide, just so the focus is on what's written there and nothing else. Again, this is my style, okay? Starting point from my classes, I'm speaking fast because we only have a few minutes. But the starting point in my classes are normally maybe a YouTube video that I saw. So I'm scrolling YouTube and I see this topic. Maybe I didn't click on the fucking video even. I just saw that topic and I was like, damn, I could ask some questions about that. Or I watch the video, and then as I watch the video, I think of all the questions that could be asked, thinking of the things that are reminded, So I have this slide about love, and then it started with the video that's at the end, and then this specialist is talking about flirting, so I ask a bunch of questions about flirting. They talk about love at first sight, so I ask questions about love at first sight. They talk about compatibility, so I ask questions about compatibility. So, I use that YouTube video as a starting point. Or something a student said. I had a conversation with a student about getting old, and then I created a slide about, being elderly or old age. Something a friend said. I was having a conversation with my partner about, I think it was technology or something, and so I created a slide about technology. So, I use my life as inspiration. Something that happened in my life, in a student's life, or something that I noticed uses a certain grammar. So on Mother's Day, I use that your mother slide a lot because it uses third person so much. You need to use the third person with the S. My mother does. My mother stays. My mother relaxes. I created a slide these days that is about describing what the professions do. So what does a painter do? A painter does bididi. A painter paints. Chef bakes. So they need to add that fucking S in the end of all their answers. Many chances for us to cement those grammar structures. I use Google Slides, okay? So you can apply this to anything that you use to create your slides. I do use Google because it's just no shits, it's just easy to load. Sometimes Canva is a little heavy for my the amount of tabs that I leave maybe open because I open all the tabs for my day already. But Canva is really beautiful too. I use this to make my presentation, right? So I make a copy of the presentation that's ready. I add one question to each slide. I refine, after I've done brainstorming all the questions, I refine and reflect on the flow, on the order of the questions. Is this question going ahead of itself? Does it make sense for this question to be after this? Because maybe I could explore this question a little bit more, At the end, I attach a video or an article or media links, a BuzzFeed quiz, something that they could read, they could listen to. Again, at the end, because my focus is always having conversation, and if we have time, a video or something else. And then I make a cover. If I'm feeling fancy, I add frills, which is any decoration, GIFs on Giphy. But I tend to not do that right up front because it uses a lot of time. You'll see then that I also put that the questions are varied. The questions are phrased in a way that it can be used for all genders. So I don't ask, do you have a girlfriend? I ask, do you have a significant other? I rarely overcrowd my slides with too many images or stuff like that because it's clean. Said that, I teach a lesson, and when I teach it, I get insights on how I could make it better. So I maybe edit it after a few times that I taught it, So that's cool because every conversation you have with a student is an opportunity for you to essentially make your class better. Sometimes I make a copy of the lesson and I dumb down the questions. I simplify the questions for the different levels if I notice that something's too complex. But in general, I use all the slides for most of the levels, honestly, because questions are questions and the person's going to want to answer. If they have a lot of repertoire, they can answer it in a complex way. If they don't, they can do it in a basic way, and that's okay. Dealing with that discomfort is part of the process. But we'll talk about that when we're specifying the teaching to different levels, right? Depending on the student's level, I even avoid sharing the slides and I just use the lesson as a guide in the conversation. And I just, I improvise because maybe the questions that I made are too basic compared to what the student's ready to talk about, or maybe they really do need to read the questions so that they can visualize things well. And that is it, my people. That is really what I do. Like, it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Sometimes it takes like 15 minutes because it's just pop, 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 boom. Right. And then students, they should be reading out of class. They should be listening to videos out of class. If they're not, then that is essentially their problem, not yours. Right. Because they're the ones who should be looking after this stuff. We will talk about autonomy in the next meeting. So be ready for that. Be ready to bring your things, your burning questions about autonomy, your problems, your things. Abner is like itching inside. I can tell. You're gonna die. No, don't die. Please stay alive. But this has been a pleasure, my people. Don't forget the screenshot. Yes. Oh my God, I always forget the screenshot. Jesus Christ, thank you for reminding me. Can I, people? There you go. Thank you very much for being here, for listening, for being a part of this. If you ever feel like, oh, I would love you to revise this class for me, can you take a look, Bea? I am there, okay, people? I'm here for you. Like, send it in the group too. Whatever you need, we're in this together, okay? So count on me. I'm going to send this in a group. Any questions, you know where to find me. And that is it for today, my loves. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
good one.
you.
Thank
Bye
you.
Thank
bye,
you,
guys.
Thank you,
girls. See you
guys.
Bye
guys.
bye.